Hi, everybody. My name's Kate. I go by Ghosty online, and I've got some dark bags under my eyes today. I'm hoping that I have enough energy to make this video and talk about like what I want to talk about today. Because I think it's like um, something that I've been wanting to sort of parse out, like kind of figure out my own feelings about for a long time, but also something that I think is like kind of important to a lot of people, and also something that a lot of people have questions about. And that's specifically is like my own sexuality. And when I say uh, you know people having questions, I don't mean people asking like how I feel about things, but people asking themselves how they feel about things and beginning to question things. For me, um, I think that my sexuality is partly tied up in my gender identity, which I think is true for a lot of people. Um, for me, I think that when it comes to uh, like romance specifically, I have like a few things that I really look for. Um, One of them is not a gendered identity, which is um, a big sort of item for a lot of people, and I think that makes perfect sense. Like everyone's has their own preferences, and that's perfectly fine. Um, but I think another assumption would be that I am like homosexual or bisexual because I identify or I desire to identify as a female, and that's is not necessarily the case. Like I think I have had for a long time like really negative uh, like self-deprecating thoughts when it comes to homosexuality because of the way that I was raised. That was like not even a topic of debate or conversation in my household. Um, but I guess I came to a point like later in my life where I realized that it was important to me to figure out the distinction in my own, my heart and my mind, the distinction between sexuality and gender identity, because I felt that my sexuality was determined strictly by my gender identity. And, you know, identifying as a biological male for the majority of my life as cisgender male, that meant that I was meant to pursue women, which is to even now and has always been my preference. I guess like I'm going on this big tangent, but all of this is to say that I identify as pan, but I I identify as pan, but I prefer. I have a preference towards females because that's my experience and because I have a lot of like mental pre-programming to overcome when it comes to being attracted to the same sex or the same biological identity or biological gender, I should say. Excuse me. So, I guess to start off, I would like to say that for me, my gender identity was something that I had discovered like really early on, and in fact, like coming into enforcing myself into the mold of being a cisgendered male was more difficult than understanding how I actually felt. Now, when it came to um, my sexuality, that was not in any way, I guess, like a natural process. And part of that is because of a lot of the mental pre-programming that I went through. Being raised Mormon, um, I would say that the correct Mormon doctrine and the way that it is meant to be taught is that you love the person, not the sin, right? That's how they teach it. So you can love a homosexual person, but not the act of homosexuality. In my household, homosexuality was heavily demonized. And I think I even stated previously in a previous video a quote that has stuck with me like to now. Something that my mom said when I was a kid was that she would rather me be a murderer than a gay man, which is just the most unhinged shit ever. But all of this was on top of like a very hypocritical backdrop, right? So of course, also in the Mormon Church, they teach you to be faithful to your spouse, and my parents didn't do that, and they teach you not to gamble. My parents gambled. They teach you not to drink. My mom drank. So all of this is to say that I was taught one thing. It was very much, monk, you do as I say, not as I do. So my sexuality, there was never like I was never really close to like a gay individual or anything like that. But when I was growing up, my mom kind of was had us going through a lot of the shows that she liked whenever she was around the age I am now, maybe a little younger even. And she had us watching like Charmed and stuff like that. But the one show that I really loved the most was Buffy. And you can ask like anybody that knows me now. I still talk about Buffy. I still think about Sarah Michelle Gellar. I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of men and women do. Um, for a lot of different reasons. But when I think about Buffy, I don't think about Sarah Michelle Gellar. I don't think about Buffy. I think about Willow. I think about Allison Hannigan, who plays Buffy's friend. And I guess like aesthetically, Buffy is more my type. Like she's kind of badass. She like wears the dark clothes and shit. She's a blonde, which I historically have gotten entangled with a couple times. Regardless, though, when it comes to Buffy, I thought of Willow, and the reason for that was because of an on TV relationship that she has with her. I remember her character's name is Tara. I would have to look up the actress's name because I don't know the actress's name off the top of my head. But they had an on-screen romance, a Willow and Tara, and it was my first time ever really being exposed to any kind of homosexual relationship. But it specifically was a lesbian relationship, and I remember like specifically where I was and like how old I was. Like, a lot of my memories are fuzzy because I struggle with depression. I'm on a lot of meds, this, that, and the other thing. I have a neurological condition now. But this memory is so clear. I can remember where I was. I was watching Buffy with my mom, and it was a little weird because I was sitting there with my mom. But, like, whenever I would watch... So, the specific instance, I remember the first time I saw the two of them on TV. And they were, like, holding hands and walking, like, through school together. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They must be really good friends. But as I continued watching it, I kind of came to understand that, like, this is what I want. Like, this is what I want my relationships to be like. This is the kind of love, the form of love that I want to pursue. And I guess, like, I don't really know how else to explain it. Like, seeing that on television relationship, which is very much not a real relationship, based on a comic series, right? Seeing that on television relationship as a young preteen, like, I must have been 11, like 10 or 11 years old. Like, I realized that's what I wanted. Like, it awakened me, essentially, to realizing, like, well, I knew how I felt, and this is, like, me seeing it actualized. Me seeing, like, this is a real, like, I mean, obviously it's not like viewing a trans person in the relationship. Like, I still have an entirely unique hurdle to overcome there, but it felt like a step in the direction of, like, what felt more natural and loving to me. And even since then, since I was a preteen, a young teen, like, my perception has always been that homosexual relationships are much more comforting, much more loving, much more understanding than heterosexual relationships can be. This is not necessarily true. This is just my own perception after being raised to view certain heterosexual relationships that were not healthy, and then seeing homosexual relationships that were. Um, and in fact, in my life, I've now known and been friends with and been introduced to many homosexual people, of course. And I don't personally know one that has been in a bad. Well, that's not true. There was one couple that I worked with that argued a lot, and I know they're not together anymore. But for the most part, like my theory holds out. Okay, like maybe the jury's still out on that one, but we'll see. Regardless, like for a long time, I really thought it was very silly that I would look at a show, and especially like an older show that like kids today probably don't even know what I'm talking about for the most part. And looking at a show and seeing a relationship in a television show and thinking to myself, not only does this look better than what I've seen, this is what I want for my future. Um, and so yeah, like I said before, I do identify as pan, but I feel like a big driving factor um, for me wanting to transition was like the pursuit of like, see, that's not entirely true. I want that to be true. Like I want to say that my transition was spurred in part by my desire to have that ideal romance, but that's not even true because now I'm in a place where the romantic aspect has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's complete self fulfillment, and so I guess that's another important distinction between like sexuality and gender identity, right? Because my transition is associated with my gender identity and who I feel as a person, whereas me watching Buffy as a kid, as a 10, 11-year old kid, and seeing Willow and Tara together on TV and realizing that that was what I wanted, that is inextricably tied to my sexuality as an individual. It's two very separate things, and I feel like, again, like I started saying at the very beginning, these are things that I didn't always understand could be independent of each other. Like I think that's something that a lot of people still don't understand, and something that's important to proliferate and discuss. Like you can be a cisgendered male or female and just be gay, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that, and you should be perfectly okay with that. But it's also okay to want to transition and still be attracted to the opposite biological gender. And I guess that this is a big misunderstanding that I had for a really long time, and something that I feel like uh, people could benefit from talking about. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I guess it seemed like a silly thing for me to want to sit down and like talk about and make a video about. But the more that I thought about it, and even had a conversation with my mom about it, not my current mom, my non-biological mom, even after I had a conversation with my mom about it, realized like this was kind of an awakening moment for me. Like I kind of realized I can have opinions and I can have preferences. I can like things, and you know. So, of course, all of this is just has been and was for a really long time just buried under like uh, pre-programmed, pre-installed guilt and shame that I had been put through throughout my entire childhood. Like even just saying something, like I remember one time when I was in the car with my mom. My mom to this day will spit uh, like homosexual vitriol like as much as you could come up with. But when I was a kid, we had been listening to a song, and I said, "I love that song." I must have said, "I love that song," or something. I don't even know how I said it, but she said, "Don't say it like that. That you sound gay. Don't sound gay, right? Like, because that's the worst thing that you can that you can come across as is a gay person. But now, as an adult, I gotta feel like it's the best thing you can come across as because you're just, I don't know, you're opposite of what I was taught to be, and that's what you really should try to be.